Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of the Temporal 3 podcast, where we talk all about fire alarm. I'm joined by my co host, Mr. Charles Ullner,
Yay, good day.
and Mr. Rich Roberts is our guest today. Good morning, Rich.
Good morning to the both of you, and very happy to be back for another episode.
Awesome. So, Rich, one of the things I'd like to talk about today is the importance of training. And you've been in this industry a long time, much as Charles and I have. And I think you have some interesting takes about the takes on the importance of training in our industry. How important is it for companies to train their techs and develop their technicians?
Excellent question, Brian. Training is critical for all types of systems, intrusion, access, CCTV, but it's even more critical for fire alarm systems. And why is that? And that is because of the codes and standards aspect. On the security side, it is regulated, okay, but the fire alarm system is highly regulated. So you really need to be knowledgeable on the codes and standards that are adopted and enforced in your respective jurisdiction. And of course, you want to be trained on the product that you're installing because that is critical.
Absolutely. And I would agree with that. Yeah. And developing technicians, training is an investment in technicians. We always talk to our customers about that. There's always the fear of, well, if I train their people, we're going to leave. And it's like Zig Ziglar said, what's worse than training people and having them leave? Not training them and having them stay. So it's always an investment in the future of your people.
Yep,
Well,
totally agree.
one thing that I'm concerned about for our industry is in our classes, we see more and more, how shall I say, seasoned, white bearded individuals and fewer younger folks. So getting the word out to younger folks about, hey, this is a great industry to be in, I think is a really, really important issue industry wide. How do we attract those people to join this industry and get the training that they need?
Yeah, I think that is a challenge wherever I go, whether I'm talking to manufacturers, installation companies, AHJs. There's just a real serious lack of young people coming in. And, as it getting back to the gray haired, bald people, codes and standards, they change all the time, basically every 3 years. And so you really need to keep up continuing education, even for us old people. But, I don't have an answer for how to attract new blood because this is something that you name the association. Um, Everyone is struggling with it.
I
They
like to
don't have
frame
a fire alarm booth at career day in high school, do they?
Well, that's I think where we need to start is because, speaking for myself, I mean, college was never really suited for me. It wasn't a good fit. But the trades, I mean, you can go out and make a really good living as a quality, educated fire alarm technician, and it's a great career.
my opinion and my take is that we don't do enough to frame it as a trade. That electrical, plumbing, HVAC, they're really good at promoting it as a trade. And if we promote it more as a trade and low voltage in general as a trade, and as Rich said, you don't need a college education to work in this industry. And if we develop a better job, do a better job as promoting it as a trade, something that you can come into that basically you're going to learn OJT, you're going to get paid while you're doing it, and as Rich said, it's going to be something you have a career in that you can retire in 30 or 40 years and have a substantial nest egg to work from if you work hard in this industry. It's something that is beneficial. I'm a great testament to that. 45 years. I didn't finish college, but I think I've done fairly well for myself. not having a college degree. Certainly better than a lot of my associates who went on and get degrees.
Yeah, Brian, we don't need college in this industry. I mean, think about it. The code is so straightforward and easy to read, nobody will have any trouble deciphering that.
Oh, Charles, you have drank the Kool-Aid, buddy. Yeah, I mean, it's I have a couple people that in product management, and they often send me an email and they have a question, and of course they say, "Okay, Richard, do not give me code speak. Give me Give me the answer in, simple layman's term. And, maybe I'm digressing here, but that is the goal of, all the technical committees in NFPA 72 or NFPA 1 or 101 or the I codes. We really strive to make sure that the language is clear and that will make it enforceable. But, in the process of developing it, it doesn't always come out clear and enforceable language. So,
Keep
I
trying,
always
Rich. Keep trying.
I
yeah, I
always
got
like
another 20 years. Maybe I'll get it right by then.
I like to say to people that the code is written by engineers with oversight by lawyers. And the engineers are making it technical. They're using the technical language because, unfortunately, you do have to use very precise language in the code because it is subject to interpretation. So you have to be very precise and accurate in your language. And then the lawyers are there to make it legal, to make it enforceable.
Yeah.
Because if you put something in the code that is not legally enforceable, it's kind of a moot point.
Yep. Absolutely.
So, guys, the next thing I'd like to talk about, speaking of codes, is NFPA 72's recognized communications methods from 26.6. There's been a lot of activity in this in recent years and a lot of changes going on in the way that our fire panels communicate to the supervising station. And I'm old enough to remember when DAX first became a thing. I can remember the old Silent Night panel that you had to buy an outboard module to have
Yep.
it support two phone lines. And sold a bunch of those. And I remember when that came out, and that was like a really great thing. Rich, I'm sure you've seen a lot over the years, and Charles, you as well, in the involvement of those technologies. One thing that changed with DAX a couple of editions back in the code, we used to do DAX two phone lines and 24-hour test. Now DAX are one phone line. This is back to 2013, which is really not quite a long time ago now, but one phone line and 6-hour test, with the second method being basically performance based or radio. And that's an interesting change for sure. What have
Yeah.
you guys seen, Rich? Go ahead, Rich.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead. No, go. Go ahead.
I was going to say, what have you seen radio wise change?
I got a blank on that one. Um,
Okay, that's all right. We'll
Well,
come.
the technology in the radios have changed quite a bit. Back in the 90s, when I worked with radios, they had what seemed to be a much more limited utility and limited range, both in the industry. Now they're a lot more prevalent. They're a lot more powerful than they used to be. So there's that.
Yep,
yeah.
absolutely.
Excellent. Yep.
I think the up and coming technology though is performance based being a catch all for IP and cellular. And Rich, I know this is an area that you have a particular amount of involvement with and have done a lot of commentary on and certainly shared a lot of information with us about it. Do you want to talk about some of the things going on with performance based?
Yeah. Um, the performance-based provision or section in 72, it's w- eh, instead of the way it was done in the past, it was very prescriptive for the particular type of communication technology, whether it's DAC or whether it was radio or whatever. And now it's more performance based, that you have a certain set of criteria that whatever technology that you're using has to meet. For example, a certain amount of time that it has to report a trouble signal. It has to be the communication pathway has to be supervised, and this is really needed because technology in this space is changing so dramatically that who knows what we're going to have in another 5 years, and new technology that comes along. So as long as it meets the criteria in Chapter 26, then these technologies should be okay. And obviously, they have to be listed as complying with the applicable UL product standard.
Absolutely. One of the things that occurs when we use performance-based technology that we don't see typically with, DACs or one-way or two-way radio is the presence of the ASP, the auxiliary service provider, and this has been fuel for recent changes to the code and upcoming changes as well. And Rich, I know this is an area again that you are particularly
Mhm.
involved in or very interested in. Could you fill our audience in a little bit on what's going on with ASPs?
Wow. Yeah, there is actually a lot going on. These ASPs, this product was hit the market probably 5, 6 years ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a entity that is located between the protected premises and the supervising station. So all the alarm trouble supervisory signals from the protected premise to the supervising station has to go through this ASP. And the ASP will manipulate or change the data. And typically, what it'll do is it'll send notifications, information, data to the installation company, to the building facility manager, or to other entities. And it'll give them more information as to what is going on with the fire alarm system. Of course, Chapter 26 of NFPA 72 requires the signals have to go through a supervising station before going to the 911 communications center of the jurisdiction. So the ASP is providing or offering a lot of feature rich benefits for all the stakeholders. Okay. Well, as I said, it was 5, 6 years ago, somewhere in that time frame, that this technology came out. But since, and as I said a minute ago, technology is evolving so quickly that there were no prescriptive or any kind of provisions in Chapter 26 of 72 for this. And unfortunately, and this started right at the development for the 2025 edition of 72, there were several fairly notable communication failures with ASPs. All right. And unfortunately, no one knew that there was a COM failure. The supervising station didn't know, and the protected premises fire alarm control unit didn't know. And there were thousands and thousands of systems that were just out there not communicating to anyone. So, as I said, for the development of the 2025 edition of 72, the committee said, we got to do something. It's got to have all the core tenets that we have for fire alarm systems, secondary power, supervision, so on and so forth. And lo and behold, a new section was added to the 2025 edition of 72 dealing with ASPs. And it had in there that, okay, you got to have secondary power, you got to have supervision, but another provision in there, and it was in section 26 to 11.3, that required that this ASP be housed in a facility, okay, that has some resiliency to it. Security. So anybody would be prohibited from walking in off the street and getting to it. fire protection, making sure that it's in a building that has fire alarms, sprinkler systems, security systems, and all this. And the committee said, well, the best thing that we have available right now was UL 827, which is the Central Station Services product standard. Okay. And there were resiliency requirements in there for that. All right. And the thought was that, okay, the UL 827 technical committee would form a working group to add requirements to that product standard specifically for ASPs. Well, lo and behold, that just didn't happen in a timely manner. All right. So, the first state to adopt the 2027 or 2025 edition of NFPA 72 is California. All right. Well, we started looking at that provision in 26.211.3 of that, it has to be housed in a facility that is UL 827 listed. And 827 had no requirements for that. So that really means that that provision is unenforceable. Um, so once the industry became aware of that, we contacted CAL FIRE, the Office of California State Fire Marshal, let them know. Obviously, there was a lot of conversation going back and forth, and they actually issued an information bulletin for the AHJs in California saying that the requirements for to comply with UL 827, excellent, Charles, is unenforceable. All right. And I am using this information bulletin as I travel and as I speak to people that may be considering adopting the 2025 edition of 72 that you can't enforce that provision. All right.
Hmm.
Now, the good news is, and if I'm rambling on too much here,
It's
please
okay, you're
let me
good.
know. But we're already halfway through the development for the 2028 edition of NFPA 72. And, the Chapter 26 Technical Committee is very close to finalizing language, okay, relating to ASPs. And once that is finalized, hopefully in the fall of this year, then we will issue a TIA, tentative interim amendment for the 2025 edition with this new language. Now, that's what NFPA 72 is working on. UL, they have actually formed a new technical committee for the development of a new product standard specifically for ASPs, and that is UL 8555, 8555. And this group is, and I'm a member of it. They're working very diligently, and the hope is, and I probably shouldn't say this, but the hope is to have the product standard out, finalized, and published by the end of this year. So, there's a lot going on in this area, and I hope that I succinctly and clearly communicated all this.
Yes,
Well,
absolutely.
and Rich, I think it really goes to Brian's point that uh, we don't need no college in this industry.
A couple, three old dogs here, okay? And we all go back. We've all, I think I said this on the last podcast. I think we all go back probably close to 30 years, between the three of us, knowing each other. And I've got 40 years in the trade. So,
Well, and one thing I think is important, this whole discussion is focused on uh, a very specific thing. The technicians who are out in the field working with cellular or working with radios, uh, they wire it up, turn it on, and it either works or it doesn't. They have no idea about this ASP stuff. at all. The manufacturers uh, have more of a direct uh, interest in these requirements. So um, it's important for all of us to know about this stuff, but it's not critical for the guy standing at a fire control panel wiring it up.
That is true, until the AHA comes out and says, "Okay, is your ASP that you're using here listed as complying with UL 827?" And that's where the, problem, really starts. And the good news is, I'm talking about this in webinars, podcasts, articles, but I'm also, and obviously the industry, I'm trying to inform the industry. But for example, at the National Association of State Fire Marshals annual conference in August, I'm doing a session specifically on this issue to let the state fire marshals know, okay, we have an issue here. The industry is working on it, but this particular provision in the 2025 edition is not enforceable. And then hopefully they will then take that back to all their AHJs in their respective states. So, that's kind of a big mission for me in the second half of this year is to get out and really educate the AHJs on this
Sure.
issue.
I see this issue similar to what happened to the sprinkler industry, decade and a half ago with antifreeze systems. And where there was a loss of life due to an antifreeze system where the antifreeze had separated from the water. And when the sprinkler head popped, it dropped the propylene glycol or glycerin, I don't know which one it was, which surprisingly is flammable, onto the stove and caused an explosion and killed one person and gave another person like burns over 90% of their body. And there were other issues as well with, but it completely turned the sprinkler industry upside down until somebody came out with a listed antifreeze. But for a number of years, the code was in turmoil. The industry was in turmoil about that. And the way I look at it, guys, is that Charles, you like to use the term death, destruction, and mayhem um, as the reason that codes change. And what codes change because we learn things. And it was discovered that there was a loophole, so to speak, in the way ASPs operated, and the code remedied it. And unfortunately, wheels turn slowly. Things don't happen overnight. And I'm sure that with other technologies, other parts of the code, that's why code changes happen. But that's why it's so important for us to stay engaged, that we always are learning about codes and learning about code changes and new things. So, Rich, like you said, the AHJ that says, well, is your ASP UL 827? How many technicians are going to look at that AHJ and say, what's an ASP?
Yeah,
And if I wasn't a code geek that I am, I wouldn't know what an ASP is.
yeah, yeah. And it's, I mean, you really hit the nail on the head. A lot of people complain that, all right, every 3 years, the respective codes and standards they are updated. All right. Well, they're updated for a reason because there's a known problem in the field that needs to be fixed. Technology does change and lessons learned from past fire disasters or incidents. And as I say, it's just basically over a 100-year um, work in progress that we keep doing this. And it's important. Of course, a lot of people, there are some stakeholders out there that want to freeze or extend the state adoption of model codes from every 3 years, to 6 or 9 years. I don't agree with that. And that's a big issue that's going on in the industry, which may be a good topic for another podcast in the future. But
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, as you say, things change and we learn things, and I always that what I come back to is what's the value of a human life? That if we are saving lives by updating the code, what is somebody's life worth? Because a code change could theoretically change somebody's life, save somebody's life, even your own life or someone you love. And, it's why do we have seatbelts in cars? And I don't see the value in delaying that. Yes, it is a procedural thing. It costs money. The codes always get more intense as they go on. You generally don't see code requirements lessened. Usually they are increased, but that's for a really good reason.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, it's just critically important that, we keep up with things because there's things that we always find that, and, a lot of times, it's a 3-year cycle to develop the next edition of NFPA 72 or a model code. So it's almost like a continuous um process, but we'll be in the middle of the development of the next standard or code, and something will come up, and it's too late to address it, and we got to go on to the next edition or issue a TIA. So
Well, guys, I do appreciate the code discussion today and very appreciate the deep dive, Rich, into the ASP situation and the changes that we can look for in NFPA 72. And more importantly, helping to educate our listeners about what ASPs are, what they do. And if they're asked that question by the AHJ, at least they know how to respond, know what an ASP is, and know how to be
right,
able to address that question.
yep,
So,
absolutely. So no, appreciate you having me on again. And this is another example that the technicians, um, the system programmers, they need to stay on top of codes and standards. And the other thing too is if anyone is interested in getting on an NFPA technical committee, please get with Brian, Charles, or myself, and we'll be more than happy to, um, assist you in that process. For me, it's a no-brainer. I do this all the time, but somebody that's never done it before, it can be a little daunting. So, as I always like to say, we're here as a resource for the industry.
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you again, gentlemen, for your time today. That concludes this edition of the NTC Temporal 3 podcast. Please remember to subscribe, and we will see you all next time.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Brian.
You all have a happy, enjoyable, and safe day. Take care. Bye.